Let's look at trig values within the unit circle. We've laid all the groundwork. Now it's time to apply all that stuff and figure out, say, what sine of 270 is, or cotangent of 315. That's what we're going to be focusing on today. Here's kind of all of our points within the unit circle that we figured out at each individual degree. However, we are going to be focusing mainly on this unit circle touch app to more or less look at each individual angle and what the trig values are going to be. So let's figure out how to get from point A to point B. Mainly from an angle and a trig ratio, or a trig function, to an actual ratio or value that we get back. So here's our first example. Let's see if I can make this a little bit bigger for you. We have cotangent of 300 degrees. Cotangent of 300 degrees. So when you look at this, you might think, well, how do I get there? How do I figure out what cotangent of 300 is? This is why we looked at the coordinate identities. This is why we learned the circle and the points on it. We're just going to put those two things together, figure out what we get. First thing we're going to do is locate the angle on the unit circle. So you just need to find out where 300 degrees is, and you can sketch the angle if you want. It's going to be 30 degrees past 270, so it's going to be this point down here. Right, 30 degrees past 270. That's all you're going to do for step 1. Step 2, you are going to determine what that point on the unit circle is. So let's pull up our unit circle app and go to 300 degrees. We can see that that point is 1/2 common negative square root of 3 over 2. All right, 1/2 common negative square root of 3 over 2. So that's what we're going to write for our point. Okay, once we figure the point out, then we're going to write our coordinate identity out, whatever that coordinate identity is. In this case, it's cotangent of theta equals x over y. We learned that in our last lesson. Since we know that x is 1/2 and y is negative square root of 3 over 2, we can plug those values into this ratio. So we got 1/2 for x and negative square root of 3 over 2 for y. We just have to flip this fraction. So it's going to be 1/2 times 2 over negative square root of 3. 2's cancel. We get 1 over negative square root of 3. And then we have to rationalize the denominator. Final answer, negative square root of 3 over 3. So that's what cotangent of 300 is. It's negative square root of 3 over 3. Now, let's pull back up our unit circle app. And we can see that if you go to 300 on the unit circle, if you just use this app and you tap on 300, it's actually going to go ahead and give you that cotangent value, which I like about this app. That's one of the reasons I made it, so you can quickly look at all the trig functions for each individual angle. Before I close this video, I'm just going to show you quickly what each ratio is. Of course, you'll need to know how to get there doing these steps that we just learned. Okay, I'm just going to do every example, one video for here, so let's just move on to example 2. We have cosecant of 270. Cosecant of 270. So first things first, we need to locate that angle on the unit circle. Let's pull up our unit circle app. So 270 is down here, right? Pretty quick. Next step, which we already talked about, was to locate what that point on the unit circle is. That point is 0, negative 1. So for step 1, you might want to just, draw like a whatever and go down 270 degrees. And that point is 0, negative 1, which is what we're going to write for the next step. Okay, so it's 0, negative 1. Okay, if you remember our next step, it's going to be to write out the identity. What is the identity for cosecant? Well, if you remember from our last lesson, cosecant of theta is equal to 1 over y. Okay, so now we're going to apply that identity. You can see the y value of our point is negative 1, so it's just going to be 1 over negative 1, right? So 1 over y means 1 over negative 1. So let's go ahead and do that. Not cosine, cosecant. And then we're just going to simplify that for step 4. That means cosecant of theta 1 over -1 equals -1. That's going to be our final answer. Again, if you pull up the app, you can actually quickly go over here and see that cosecant of 270 is -1. But that's how we got there. Okay, so don't just use the app to figure out what every trig value is just by clicking on a point. It should be a study guide more than just giving you what the answer is. Okay, so let's look at another example. All right, next example. Let's evaluate cosine of 330 degrees. First thing we need to do is locate that on the unit circle. And this time I'm just going to draw this angle. It's going to be 60 degrees past 270. The reference angle, like we talked about, is going to be 30 degrees. Okay, let's pull up our unit circle app and see what that looks like. So at 330, which is right here, I'm just going to touch this point. There's our point, square root of 3 over 2, comma -1/2. Now let's go ahead and just do this. We know cosine is the x value, right? So what is the x value of this point? Square root of 3 over 2. That's why cosine of 330 is square root of 3 over 2. Real easy. Okay? The more you study the unit circle, the more you study these coordinate identities, the much easier this gets. Okay, lastly, for now at least, we're going to evaluate sine of 235. Okay? Let's review our steps real quick, and we're going to go just do them on the unit circle. We define that point on the unit circle first by using this angle of 235 degrees. Next, we're going to figure out whatever that point is at 235. Then we're going to write out whatever that identity is. We know that sine of theta is equal to y, so let's go ahead and just write that out. And finally, what we're going to do is plug in whatever the x value and y value is in for the identity. In this case, it's just y, so we're just going to look at the y value of the point, and then we're going to write our answer out. So let's take a look. Okay, so did I say 235 or 225? I see this, it's a 225. Let me fix that real quick. Okay, so we will be doing 225, but that does bring up a good point, you know. Just in case, you know, you wanted to figure out what sine of 235 is. Well, it's not a special point on the unit circle. It does exist, but there's other ways to find those, more advanced math. Just know that there are points there. I mean, a circle has 360 degrees, right? So you could draw a triangle and could evaluate it, but it's not a special point in the unit circle. This 225 is a standard point in the unit circle. So let's go ahead and see what that is. Okay, so again, what we're going to do is we're going to go to 225, touch that point, know what that point is. You have to memorize that, of course. That point is negative square root of 2 over 2, comma negative square root of 2 over 2. We know that sine is y, and therefore y value is negative square root of 2 over 2. That's your sine. And that's it. So we're going to go through this unit circle, touch every single point. Over here you can see what these trig values are, and you're welcome to use this app as much as you'd like. Maybe you just want to memorize every single trig value at every point. However, I think that the coordinate identities make it a lot easier without having to memorize every single one of these values at every single angle. As long as you know x and y identities and you know what this point is, you can quickly figure out what it's going to be. Not sure if I skipped 180 or not. But here we go down to 225, 240, 270. Here's your values. 300. Here's your values. You can see the same values pop up for multiples of 45. The same values pop up for multiples of 30. It just depends on whether they're negative or positive. Okay, so that's it for now for unit circle trig values, standard angles in degrees. Later we're going to look at radians and see how that relates to the unit circle. If you have any other questions about this lesson, let me know.